how much therapy, healing, psychology, maybe eventually alchemy, and quantum physics could be intricated, and how it would necessarily leads ultimately to metaphysics. The world is changing, and a lot of traumatic events did occur. It was collectively traumatic. We may have some pauses, but most likely it would go on. It would continue as far as there's no change. We have overwhelming events. So people feel collectively traumatized, and it does lead them to their own feelings, their own traumas. They get conscious about somehow some inner world. And I wanted to have a reflection during this webinar um, upon the trauma as an event and the question of time. The idea in quantum physics is that past and future are overlapping. The past is still here physically, and the future already happens. Our consciousness is perceiving informations. In matter of fact, 2 million of informations per second. But interestingly enough, those informations are perceived 2 seconds in the future. As far as what is perceived is, in a matter of fact, perceived in the future and then reorganized and redistributed to the brain, we can understand that consciousness could perceive as well events further in the future, sometimes more than 2 seconds. Could be 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 10 months. Those events are perceived, and it does create an emotion, a reaction. Sometimes we are feeling weird or special for no reasons, but yet we are perceiving what's going to happen next, and we are already experiencing emotionally what's going to happen. That's so it is with the past and the trauma. We had this experience of a trauma back to the past, and we could say that it's still carved in the present moment. It's still printed here. We are still experiencing this wound which did occur in the past. In order to go back to psychology, let's understand what is a trauma. It's not about the physical pain that we are experiencing during a trauma. Most of the time, there is not much physical pain to experience, or when it's the case, it's often not very painful, and when it is, it occurs briefly. The essence of trauma as a definition is that it makes us flip our perception of reality. Quite often, traumas are due to some experience that we have with people. And it's not the event by itself which is making us twisting our perception of reality. Is the fact that we get conscious that someone have the willingness to hurt us. someone is clearly and officially malevolent. And it makes them perceive the reality, the span of what occurs as something which is and could become at any moment a threat. That puts us into stress. All the metabolism and hormones are completely twisted. And as we observed it fairly through quantum physics, this event is still here. What we can understand through quantum is that this consciousness is a time traveler. It's perceiving events in the future and observing events which happen in the past. As far as this consciousness is perceiving an event, it will influence them. We know in physics that a particle would react differently rather if we are observing it or not. Same with photons. Eventually, a particle will exist if we observe it, and when we don't, this particle vanished. And it's exactly the same with our consciousness when it's observing events. If I'm observing you, it will exert an influence. And if I don't, maybe less. If I observe what's going to occur in the future, it will exert an influence. If I observe what did happen in the past, it's exactly the same. It will exert an influence. Without knowing it, we are time travelers. And this consciousness, which is us, is time traveling constantly, consistently, permanently. Then here comes the question of healing. How do we heal a trauma? Traditionally, we're using psychology, psychoanalysis, in order to heal trauma. My belief is that far from denying the virtue of psychoanalysis, I don't consider it as a therapy. I consider it as a language. We understand through psychoanalysis the mechanism of our psyche. We quite understand that there's a conscious mind, as we say, and an unconscious mind, subconscious, an animus, which is the collective subconscious, an anima, which is our way to present ourselves publicly. There are eventually different layers of this anima, what we call a public anima, and somehow an intimate anima. We wouldn't use the same personality, rather publicly or with boyfriend, friends, family. In all this mess and this clutter, where are we? What is our identity? As I said, I don't consider psychoanalysis as a therapy, but as a language. We would use it as a tool in order to evolve and to communicate with each other and eventually communicate with the healer, a therapist. But then the healing process is rising up. While the trauma occurred in the past, it did leave a trace and it did provoke an emotion and an energetical phenomenon, therefore. And this energy is still here, carved, until we heal it. So then, according to my beliefs, there's different ways to heal this trauma and different tools. They have different powers. Some could be considered as emergency tools. As an emergency tool, I will consider it from an alchemical way. The energy of the trauma is located somewhere in the body, and it's linked to an element. As far as it's linked to an energy body point, and it's linked to an organ. It could be the fear of survival, and this trauma could be the threat to not knowing where to sleep, not having a shelter, not having something to eat. And then this trauma would be related to the earth, which as an energy point is located in the body between the sex and the anus and related to the bowels, the ability to defecate. So then, in order to heal this trauma, we would work on the earth element with the alchemical tools of healing. And we will work on grounding, how to tame and remember what it's about being grounded. Work, for instance, could be done with plants. And it would be the same with all the other traumas and their nature. Somehow you have been hurt in one of your body energy pods. When it's a rape, for instance, it will be linked with water, the sexual organs, and the kidneys. As tool, we will work with these elements in order to cure, to heal this trauma. How to work with the sexual energies, which would lead ultimately to work with empathy. What is not a car accident or some natural events being struck by thunder or whatsoever? Most of the time, we are wounded by someone. Someone is the cause of this trauma. It's maybe as well, and here I'm going to slide slightly to metaphysics, to the fact that we do consider that the universe is safe. And yet we are evolving this incarnation on Earth, which is most likely in the universe one of the most difficult grounds to evolve and learn. We are evolving here because we want to learn fast. We want to rise the vibration of this consciousness by experiencing a body-mind organism. But sometimes we are living in too much comfort, in a bubble. And we think that this universe is safe, knowing that this universe, this environment is a constant challenge. We are thinking that people are good. knowing that in a matter of fact, sanity is something rare and insanity is common. Most of people are insane. That's a fact, but have no idea what they're doing. That's why they couldn't be taken seriously. There is something which is called socially acceptable behavior, which remains most of the time with 95% of population. And whatever the society, 5% would have inappropriate social behavior. But that is when everything goes well. In times of crisis, this rate is reversed. In a time of real crisis, 5% of the population would remain and behave in a social way, a social acceptable way, and 95% would turn out completely crazy. That's why we cannot, when there's a matter of trauma, being too judgmental and think that the cause of this trauma is someone. By evolving in this universe, we are meant to be attacked. And it's our duty, our labor, to be able to respond to those events. And when we can't, to heal ourselves. Then there's the point of view of the quantum physics in order to deal with those traumas. A trauma could occur in the future. And as far as our consciousness is perceiving it, we're already feeling the pain of this trauma in advance. In this way, we quite understand that the future is influencing us. And therefore, the future is influencing the past as well. It means as well that we can influence the past. We can rewrite these events which occurred in the past and change it. If we can change our future, it means that we can change our past. And then there's this question of time. This body has the power to heal itself. If I get hurt, whatever it's emotionally or even physically, I can heal this body with surgery or simply with energies or messages. By doing so, it will influence my aura biofield, or we can call it the psyche, or I like to call it the subtle body, which is composed by emotions, sensations, senses, or five senses, thoughts, and memories. All these mass of sensations are an energetical body. That means that it has a physical mass, therefore. We can heal this emotional subtle body with other emotions. This is alchemy. Emotions are linked with elements. So we can take some elements as a repair, use the fire as this emotion of feeling passionate or joyful, or other organs And then we understand as well that consciousness, which is beyond the subtle body, eventually beyond the body of silence, upper the subtle body, which is our body as well, our identity, more subtle. This consciousness is the witness of these three bodies. This body of silence that we meet in meditation, the subtle body, made of emotions and thoughts and sensations, and the physical body. This consciousness has the power to repair itself. But in order to reach this point, we would have to transcend our way to perceive the world and transcend time itself. Find a state within us which is timeless, which is ultimately our genuine identity, the source of our being. We can call it the present moment. As we know in quantum physics, there's no such things in either physics as a present moment. It's not less than different layers of past and future, which are intricate, influencing each other's and overlapping. So it means, by definition, that this present moment is eternal. It belongs beyond time itself. From this point of view, all these elements, all these emotions would be spontaneously and naturally realigned. Because this work wouldn't be done but by our minds, but by our higher self. We might call it, why not, our intuition. Then, from this point of view, we imagine that there's a lot to say. So, in which direction will we go? That's upon you. Does one of you ladies have a question? So that was the matter of healing. My idea is that, as I mentioned it, healing could be approached with various tools. They could be all intricate. What I consider is that psychology is a basic tool of communication. And then alchemy is maybe slightly more subtle, but somehow I would consider that psychoanalysis is not much than modern shamanism, because we would use symbolism. What I regret in psychoanalysis is that most of the time, the idea is to express an emotion, but it doesn't necessarily solve the pain. It just helps to make this pain conscious, which is already a first step. But that's the reason why I consider it as a tool of communication, a language, and not the therapy. My idea is that when something happened, we understand that we get hurt because we did perceive it symbolically. The traumatic event could be represented by a symbol. And then this is the dance of creation, isn't it? In order to delete, erase this trauma as a matter of pain, we would necessarily use all the symbols. And therefore, in order to cure this wound, we may have to be proactive. The therapy has to be strategic. If we use an element, it's to counter another element. If I feel too dry, then I will connect to the water frequency, which represents the pleasure of my body. I would provide pleasurable experiences to my body with music, sounds, healing sounds. Could be sensuality. It could be a connection with nature and animals, which are related to the element of water. And by doing so, I will work on my natural empathy. If I feel too cold on my life because of loneliness or other things, I would use the fire and I will ignite my passion and my day would be passionate. Every element is interestingly enough linked to an ancient shamanic tradition. We have been working on healing since millenniums and eventually since a longer time. The very first form of healing which did occur in the civilization at its birth was shamanism. And depending of their location, different traditions did develop some peculiar talents with some specific elements. The Native American Indians from North America were nomads. They've been working on the element of the elemental winds. The wind is the invisible influence of what is soft, penetrating, and unstoppable. It's a matter of flexibility, adaptation. The native aborigines of Amazonia, or the tropical forest of the Amazon, were the master of the water. As far as on this forest, it's raining all the time. It's pretty difficult to start a fire in Amazonia. In the same way, the ancient Celts were the master of the earth. They were connected with plants. They did understand that plants and trees have their own consciousness. They were eventually naming trees. They were giving them a surname and they were considering them as a person. They were hacking the frequency of some particular plants in order to use it as a healing power. And yet they were understanding some mysterious phenomena, such as how the consciousness of plants works. Plants are beings. They have their own consciousness and they're perceiving time 2,000 times slower than us. But yet they are communicating, chatting, socializing with each other, and so on. That's the power of alchemy, which could be used and which has its tools, healing tools, but tools of manifestation as well. How to emulate what is called a vortex, an energetical vortex of abundance. And this abundance depends of what you want in this incarnation. Could be affection, could be sweetness, could be freedom, it could be many things. As far as we are the creator of our own reality, there's tools, alchemical, shamanic tools, could be as well tools of manifestation. Well, of course, well, it could be weapons, because consciousness has a mass. Our individual consciousness is a fractal of the universal consciousness. We are experiencing the whole consciousness of the universe as a separated body mind organism. And this consciousness could expand. And at some point, rely to this whole, which is the whole universe. But this consciousness could regress as well and consider itself smaller and smaller. We don't always rise the vibratory frequency of our consciousness positively. We are regressing sometime. We are weak and we let ourselves be saturated by sorrow, pain, sadness, and negative emotions. That's why the consciousness could express a negative mass. And it could be understood only in the way that we do understand in quantum physics that time is going through two directions, onwards and backwards. At the birth of the universe, there is events which is called Big Bang, a stupendous explosion, and suddenly, from nothing, it's the birth of space and the birth of time as well. But we do understand that this Big Bang occurred in time. It did get birth to time in two directions. One side of a Big Bang when space is expanding and time going onwards. And another direction, a parallel universe, at the other side of this vortex, where time is going backwards. And that's the idea when we are expressing negative emotions, time is going backwards. And we are experiencing a regression. It's sometimes necessary in order to heal trauma because we are stuck in the past. And our consciousness can evolve while there's traumas held. Then we can progress. We can rise the frequency of our consciousness. We are here on earth for this reason. And this only reason, expanding this consciousness through the solution to be a separated body and working with something which is called an ego. Out of his body, this consciousness is still perceiving informations. Here, what I'm talking about has been scientifically proved. And I guess that be to the purpose of all this work that I'm doing, all these courses, channels on socials and whatsoever, is to deliver this message. Our consciousness is not local. We are perceiving the world through this element, this consciousness. And yet it's not located in a specific point in the body. It's neither located in our head or our brain. Our brain is not the creator of his consciousness. His consciousness prevails. If his body, mind, or organism is dying, our consciousness, which is what we are, will still perceive informations, data. It means that will perceive informations after our death, so-called death. This consciousness is connected with his body, but not permanently, just during the life of his body. And then this consciousness could eventually connect with some other body. Other body mind mechanism. What is called consciousness was called traditionally the soul. And yet we're living in an age of materialism where we lose this belief that the soul can exist, that we are a soul. Materialism is all about that, figuring that this body is creating a consciousness. And through quantum physics, from now on, and it's pretty recent, we understand that it's the opposite in matter of fact. This consciousness is the creator of this body. And we understand as well something else. As long as this consciousness is not located in a particular point of the body, it means that this consciousness is located somehow in space. And that this consciousness is not individual, but collective. We are all using the same consciousness. Me talking and you listening are perceiving this event from our consciousness. And this consciousness is the exact same for you and for me. Thus, this presentation is compelling. Would you have, Ira, at this point, something particular that you would like to gaslight? If you're particularly interested by the tools, the specific tools of healing and manifestation, I have some collective class teaching and presenting these different tools. Most of the time, like one element and representation of the ancient shamanic traditions takes 2 courses. It's pretty hard to reduce it to just one. And we go gradually from the earth, which is the ancient Celtic tradition, to the water, the tradition of the native Aborigines of Amazonia. The wind is the natives of the Native Americans from North America. The heart is the ancient Olmec tradition from Central America and the connection with sun consciousness. It's the fire. And we have the fruit, which is related with metal, and the Siberian shamanism and the use of crystals and sacred stones. Interestingly enough, stones have their own consciousness as well, and they are perceiving time 2 million times slower than. But yet, stones are printing energies. Energies could get printed in stone. So there's ancient shamans were using stone as somehow a magical or energetical notebook. And by holding the stones, they could refer and connect themselves to some particular um, energetical frequency, which is crystals, as you know. And if we want to erase what is written on the stones, we have to put them under the water, that the water elements can do some effective cleansing and resets all, all those energies which work out.